Welcome, my friends, to another episode of Fake Nerds Watch. It has been 3 years since the world felt the unimaginable sting that was the finale of Game of Thrones. But today, my friends, we have returned to Westeros. We have hopped into a time machine and went back 172 years before Daenerys Targaryen and to the height, or some say the golden age of the Targaryen dynasty, with HBO Max's House of the Dragon.
It has only been 3 years, you're right. I just thought it was longer.
A lot of people do. I am Ben Magnet. I am joined by, of course, Sparkz.
Hey.
And the beautiful human being that is known as Ryan Eliopoulos.
It's me, the heir for the day.
Yes. That's... Jesus. Okay, we'll dive into that.
Starting hot. Hot D.
Holy crap. Oh, yeah, you are starting out hot. All right. So, no one can deny what happened 3 years ago after the end of Game of Thrones. And even when we heard about House of the Dragon, some of us, I would say, if my memory serves right, I was pretty warm and pretty excited for this. Yep. But still, I will not lie, a bit of I don't know, that little twinge of doubt in the back of your mind. So
the journey getting here has certainly been fun and interesting. This is our Fake Nerds Watch, the TV show podcast, but our normal show, the Fake Nerds Watch or Fake Nerd podcast, we've talked about for years of we're done with Game of Thrones. It ended so terribly. They're already doing spinoffs, but we're here now.
Notably, this was not originally the first spinoff, right? That we were discussing in the news. We were discussing a different one, and we were all like,
what? So there's that Naomi Watts pilot that's set 1,000 years in the past, which is all about the Winter Children or whatever. Those guys, and that got canned. And then there's so many more in development, and this one finally came through, and now we're here talking about it. It's what a journey. And let me say, I'm happy to be here, y'all. Happy to be here back again.
Honestly, we'll dive into the episode more, but first impression of the episode itself, I liked it. I really liked it. I had a good time with it. I thought I was like, yeah, this is some of that good Game of Thrones political intrigue I'm here for. And also, I just love how many dragons there are. You see a lot of dragons all over the place. I just love how there's a shot of Rhaena just flying over King's Landing, and the people of King's Landing is like, oh yeah, it's a dragon. That's nothing special.
I'm going to be controversial. I don't think this is controversial. I think this is a really good pilot. I think this is a better pilot than Game of Thrones' first episode. I think how much this episode establishes as a pilot and what the season is going to unfold, what we're going to see, I think it's perfect. We know our conflict, we know who the heroes are, or quote unquote heroes. We know, without the twists and turns that we're going to see, it's very well set up this episode. Especially the end. I was really enjoying the first half of this episode, and then the second half kept going. And I really like this episode a lot, way more than I anticipated. I think all the character stuff's really good. Obviously, again, it is the first episode. There's a lot of setup stuff, but my guy Miguel Sapochnik, who directed some of the best episodes of Game of Thrones, Hard Home, Battle of the Bastards, he's the guy making this show. So the show immediately looks great. It's not all no offense to some of the shows we reviewed recently, it's not all the volume. So there's some beautiful set shit going on in the show. It's really nice to see. HBO's got the money. I am glad to be back in Game of Thrones. I quite enjoyed this first episode.
Nice. What about you, Sparkz? What did you think of the first episode?
I'm gonna respond to what Ryan said, I guess, and I'm gonna be the more controversial person, I think, which is to say that I like the episode, but I do find it weaker than the Game of Thrones pilot, for example. To me, the prominent thing is that I don't feel like I've seen a strong ensemble yet. I don't feel like I have the whole roster in front of me the way Game of Thrones did from the jump of a cast necessarily. There are people that are standing out, absolutely, but I wouldn't say it feels as grand in ensemble nature as just from the first episode.
I'll agree with that. Sure.
That there are definitely 5 or 6 very standout strong characters, I think, and then everyone else I'm I don't think I've kept myself in the lore enough or the world enough in my head since the end of the show, and I haven't revisited the books in that time to pay attention to all the names or who people are sometimes, or catch the references of like, you know, this place that this person is from, and I'm like, okay. And like it only for our first episode, it's all without those things like entrenched in my brain. A lot of the characters that are here, I'm like, I'm sure they're going to stand out more to come. But right now I'm like, that's why I'm like, I'm a little less hot about like the whole scope of the show, but I do like the core of it.
I'll say I'll agree with that. I do think, just because of what this show is going to be about, which is the Targaryens and a Targaryen civil war, I don't think the scale of the show is going to be as big as, you know, the stakes that they even set up in this episode about like the Great Winter, which is Game of Thrones and stuff. So
Right.
I do think it is setting up a smaller scope, but I don't necessarily have a negative about that. Not that you're saying it's negative, but like I didn't feel as less hot about it. Less Song of Ice, more fire for me.
I think it's more the thing that I'm very curious how the show's going to how to play this out, because you have an audience that and a team that are used to making a show where you're following multiple characters in multiple locations. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. I don't think that's what this show is going to be. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I am saying like the intrigue that grabs me at the beginning of Game of Thrones season 1, where you have so many of the characters introduced because they all go to one location, but then they split off immediately. And so, you know, oh, we're going to be following all these people in different ways and all these different things. That's not as immediately open as I guess the world feels like it's going to be potentially smaller. That's not a bad thing. It just is something where it's like my intrigue level of who we're following is a little lesser right now.
See, and again, it's been many years since that first episode, but I disagree, because I remember that first episode and we're introduced to all the Starks, and honestly, I don't care about half those kids in the beginning of that show.
Sure.
Whereas this show, like, it is a smaller cast. Like, I like Viserys. I know he's the happy king. He's a great person, maybe not a great king. You got Daemon. He's like the Vegeta of the crew. I get what he's going through. I love what he's going through. I see Rhaenyra. She's the lady who is perfectly happy being a 7 out of 10. She wants no responsibility. I just like being chill and comfortable. Like, I get every single one of these characters, as opposed to being introduced to so many more. So I was immediately able to grasp onto everyone, as opposed to like, oh, I'll see where these 14 characters eventually go to. Because this is also going to be a smaller, not scale, but a smaller season show, because like it has an end goal. Like, spoilers, we know where all these characters end up, which is one of the fun things about a prequel. Like, you kind of know where it's going, but you can still have fun on the journey. And I love the way this episode ended. Like, I'm pretty sure the time jump is going to happen either next episode or the episode after that, where we're seeing adult Rhaenyra, at least from the trailers. I know we're getting that pretty early. And I think that's a fun pilot of, hey, here's the setup for the next 100 years of the show. And I thought that was a pretty well done pilot, specifically for people who don't watch Game of Thrones. I think this is a really good pilot. It does. I don't think it throws you in as hard as Game of Thrones episode 1 does, which I think for hardcore fantasy shows, I think is sometimes needed. You need to ease them in.
Yeah, with a lot of fantasy shows, you definitely, especially with Game of Thrones, because I still do remember loving the first episode of Game of Thrones. Yeah. But it is a lot of names thrown at you with a lot of different titles.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love about the Game of Thrones episode is that the first 5 minutes or so, you have that prologue scene in north of the wall with the White Walker.
Oh, right. That's the first thing you see. I forget.
Yeah, that's like the first thing, because that's like let's establish the eventual main threat. The eventual main threat being the White Walkers. And this one, you get a deal. I would say, I mean, it's not as exciting as the original Game of Thrones episode, but you still get like some backgrounds. Like, hey, you have the Targaryen dynasty, you have 2 siblings. And the man was chosen because a bunch of other dudes were like, hey, we don't want a woman sitting on the Iron Throne. So he became king, and now he's trying to get his own son.
Yeah.
And then as the episode, I love how as you don't get, I don't want to call it fantasy light, because obviously you're watching this and you're like, oh God, I'm back. Yay. but it's still very palatable. It's not like Ned Stark talking about how he's Ward of the North, King Baratheon, blah, 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 when he's about to chop some dude's head off. It's just, here's a big castle, here's the princess. Simple. Easy turn.
It is, yeah, I think it is I definitely think it eases you into a story that's probably, again, not going to be as complicated as Game of Thrones ends up being, because it's going to it's, from what I could see, it's going to be about Daemon trying to succeed the throne against his niece. And then that's going to be a huge bad civil war where Valerian goes down, right? I see that, and I'm like, that makes me so excited, because, like, again, I know it's not going to be an end of the world thing. I know it's going to be a completely personal battle all the way through, where other people jump on board. A fun thing for me is, like, you're right, Sparkz. Like, I haven't caught up. I haven't refreshed my brain about all the houses and the state of the world and stuff. But, like, it was cool to be like, oh, right, all these other houses are involved during this time period, but they're not as popular, or they're not as involved. Like, at the end, when Rhaenyra is being sworn in as a successor, you see, oh, it's Rickard Stark, the original Stark guy, and Balon Baratheon. I'm like, oh, all these guys, 200 years from now, y'all are important. And, like, that is fun. That is fun prequel shit where they can hit you over the head with it. And there's only one instance where the Song of Ice and Fire, where I'm like, no, yeah, I get it. That's the only time where I'm like, all right, prequel. I thought the prequel stuff was, like, handled very well.
We definitely need to talk about that moment. Do you want to talk about that now, or hold off a little bit on that one? Because that's a major thing.
Yeah. We can talk about it now. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's, like, my biggest negative of the entire show.
Yeah, it is.
They did the whole Song of Ice and Fire thing. I'm like, oh.
This is important. This is important. This is a lore change from Martin.
Yeah.
So he's making a change that he's saying things that he's doing with the show will unroll and have effects in the final books that still aren't out and may never come out. But that's what he's saying with decisions like this. And this one in particular, he's talked about that, yes, this is going to be an important detail, that the Targaryens had this prophecy of what would come and how they handled passing that knowledge down, and, like, that informs Rhaegar's decisions later in life.
So here's the thing. So about that, like, that's very much like Star Wars, like the Chosen One, like kind of thing. Like, I don't have a problem with that idea. I think it's the execution of just, like, we know this prophecy. We're making Game of Thrones happen. We gotta be careful of it. Like, the execution of it was just really poor. That's all it was. Like, they could have handled it so much better.
I was not hot on that decision when I was watching the episode. I was really I roll moment entirely.
Yeah.
It was when I listened to Ringerverse, and they were discussing Martin talking about making this lore change, and knowing that it comes from Martin, and knowing it has some kind of purpose to why the Targaryens behave the way they do, the ones in power. This sense of personal responsibility that we will only pass down to the person who's on the throne and not warn anyone else about.
You know what this reminds me of?
Power. Yeah.
This, and our friend of the show, Brandon McClure, would love this. It just reminds me of the Emperor having knowledge. They're like, oh, I actually have to create an empire to save the universe.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't want to be thinking of the bad Emperor plot from the EU.
You're right. You're right. And I'm like, I'm not saying it's a good change or a good idea necessarily. I am saying I'm more interested in it because it's coming from Martin. If this were just something to be like, oh, y'all know Game of Thrones comes one day, like, kind of, it's just like a wink nod that was made just purely as a showrunner decision, I'd be like, that's a terrible, terrible choice. Yeah. But, like, there's purpose to the fact that, you know, he's saying that, and as he's saying it, he's holding the dagger that kills the Night King.
Yep.
There's purpose to that, so I'm more hopeful. It's one of those things where, like, again, like, watching it, didn't like it, hearing about it in post as a Martin decision, I'm like, this is the thing that's going to make me have more faith in this show than the end of Game of Thrones.
Yeah. And again, like, I am cool with the idea. I just think the execution of it, like, that's something I wish you would have told me, like, later in the show, not episode 1 in the pilot.
Right, that's like a season finale thing.
Like, I know we're watching Game of Thrones shit, guys. Like, that's why I'm here. Like, you don't have to tell me in episode 1. I get that shit. How do you guys feel about, how did, like, the world look, the special effects, the sets? Did it feel like authentic Game of Thrones to you? Did everything, like, being back in Dragonstone, being back in King's Landing? Like, I definitely, There's like the one place where like gets blown up by what's her name, Cersei, and I'm like, oh, that place looks different than it does now.
Definitely when I was watching, like when we go back into the Red Keep, and we're
the
going,
Red Keep. That's what I'm thinking of.
We're going back through the Red Keep, and I definitely, when me and Fan were watching this, we're like, oh hey, that's the square where Cersei draws her giant map of Westeros to plan her war, and then we're going up the staircase. It's like, hey, that's where the Clegane Bowl's gonna happen in 200 years.
You're so cute. I couldn't recognize any of that shit.
I definitely.
What else? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Also when I saw, because you're right, Sparkz, because there were times where I've forgotten a lot of the minor houses of Game of Thrones, and then I like, it took me a while when it's like, what the heck is going on in Old Town? Oh right, that's the place with the giant citadel where all the maesters learn and shit like that. Okay, yeah, it's slowly coming back to you, especially since we were so entrenched in Westeros 5, 6, 7 years ago when Game of Thrones was at its peak. And now it's like, oh yeah, this is all coming back to me. I remember all these things that are going on. And I remember like seeing a knight who was in the lineup with a flayed man sigil. I'm like, oh, that's a Bolton. Screw you. 200 years. Your family sucks.
Some people always suck.
Yeah, some people always suck. But yeah, it was still like, even when, because a part of me was like, I don't know if I want to see a Stark, or if I do see a Stark, it's just going to be like a quick cameo, which we did. We got Rickon Stark. I'm like, oh yeah, that's who the kid Rickon is named after. That's his ancestor. The one who doesn't know how to...
No, go ahead. Sorry.
The one who can't zigzag.
Exactly. The one who can't zigzag. Yeah, it definitely was like, oh yeah, I do remember all these houses, and I do remember these vistas. But as for special effects and how the world looked, it looked great. To me, I was like, this is Game of Thrones money. Like, when they know they have a good product on their hands, it's like, let's throw the money down. Let's make this look good. I liked how the Coliseum looked. I mean, there were a few times where the CGI looked a little like, yeah, you can tell that's the CGI thing. But the sets looked great. I thought the dragons were great. I love how
different dragon designs.
Yeah, exactly. The dragons look different. Like Viserys' dragon, that dragon has wings on its hindquarters, so it's like, oh, there's different species and subspecies of dragon. So
bloodworm.
Yeah, bloodworms. And because in Game of Thrones, all 3 of Daenerys' dragons look exactly the same, just color swapped.
One's a little bit bigger. Yeah.
That's about it.
I thought I was honestly kind of surprised, considering the popularity of Game of Thrones, that I did think the dragons actually didn't look as good as the last seasons of Game of Thrones.
They don't.
They didn't put the money into making the dragons look as good, which kind of surprised me, considering this is a Targaryen show with a lot of dragons, which might mean that they look better at another point in the season for important shots. There's a couple of moments where I think the dragons do look pretty good, but like a good example is like not the up close shot, but the wide shot of Viserys's, Daemon's. Daemon's dragon is not great in the CGI department, and it didn't have a problem with it. I was just surprised. More than anything, I was like, oh, I'm kind of surprised that we didn't put the money behind this.
I like the world building of like, you got like the dragon keepers who they're just always there, just like, hey, settle down.
Yeah.
They just got dudes with sticks, and I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. Cool guys.
All we need is to wait him to do the Chris Pratt, like, wait, hold.
We'll stop watching the show if they do that.
I was surprised we were already at the point in time where the Targaryens are locking them away.
Well, is it?
They're putting them back in the keep, which is the same thing that they talked about, that like they don't grow to their full size, and like Daenerys talked about it in hindsight of the Targaryen, line that when we started putting the dragons away, we made them smaller and we became smaller ourselves. I was surprised we were already at that point. I thought that's something we were going to see develop through the show, but the fact that we're already there where they put the dragons away like that
perhaps
surprised me.
Perhaps they'll go into that more this season. They didn't talk about it, but maybe somebody will mention that, like, Daemon, like, you're weakening your dragon by doing that. He's like, I don't need this dragon. I'm the coolest guy on the planet.
Right.
Bitch.
Speaking of Morbius villain himself, I think all the actors are great. I'm really loving him. First of all, Paddy Considine, who he's mostly known as a comedic actor. He was on Hot Fuzz, but he's done a lot of really great dramatic stuff too. Him as Viserys, as like, I'm everyone's friend. Like, I might not make the right decisions, but I'm just like, keep a smile on my face. I'll kill my wife, whatever. Yeah. It's all about the kingdom, right? But like, I thought he was great. Matt Smith is really fun. I like when he gets to have a little bit of an edge to him. Him just being in the brothel, talking shit about his dead brother's kid. Like, what a piece of shit. Can't wait to see him get his ass beat.
Air for a day. Yeah.
Yeah, I was Matt Smith. Daemon was like the character you had to get right, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I was never worried about him in this show, not even for a heartbeat. Like the moment like Matt Smith was cast, I was like, well, that's a winner right there.
He's like the linchpin of the show. He's
been owed this. Matt Smith's been struggling to get like another iconic role post Doctor Who. Not to say that he hasn't done good work since then, but like he hasn't gotten that like knockout punch role again in a while. So I'm really glad he has this, something that's going to put him back in people's minds constantly. Really great for him, and I think he's doing a great job because he's very good at being cold and warm at the same time.
There's again, like, I was really enjoying the first half of the episode, and then the second half, a lot of characters get like, they get some either motivation or some emotional baggage that gets revealed. Like specifically with Viserys, like he's very smiley, happy for the first half, and then the second half you really see him start to like lose it and be like less confident, like with his wife, and then him like fighting his own brother at the end, like on the throne. Like really good drama. And like, again, for Matt Smith, like again, like being like, you know, like, oh, I'm cool and like calculated, but like he also like felt like he was abandoned by his family. And I'm like, I like all the emotion. I feel it. It feels so good, so real.
Viserys very much comes across as a king, kind of like Robert, but less of the like drunken party attitude, but very much of a kind of lackadaisical king. Not taking on the responsibility of the crown sincerely.
Yeah. Same with his daughter. His daughter's just like, I just want to hang out and
well, like,
by a lake.
That's different from like recognizing the responsibility of it and just saying like, I don't really want that. I think it's actually even better because I think she does recognize the responsibility of it and says, I don't want to do that.
And she says no.
Yeah.
Just wants to hang out by a lake with her.
By the way, I love how I'm pretty sure I felt it was obvious when I was watching this. Raina totally has a crush on Allison, and I think it's super cute.
It's so cute.
Fun fact. So in the text, those two are about 10 to 12 years apart in age. Allison is 10 to 12 years older than Rhaenyra, but they brought them down to be the same age so that they could be closer friends. And both of the actors have talked about you're not misreading like the subtext that they put into the show on purpose is that they are romantically partnered. And I'm really glad of that, and that's a change, but I think it's a good change.
It's very cute.
I mean, when she's sitting there, she's like, "I just want to go on my dragon with you and fly away." I was like, "Oh yeah, you're a couple. That's cute."
Oh, word.
Well, especially the way that Alicent kind of scolds her for not taking responsibility seriously. It feels more like a romantic partner wanting you to take your position more seriously than it does just a friend.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then Alicent's dad, the Hand of the King, is like, "Hey, go to the king." Why?
Otto Hightower.
Rhys Ifans rules. He's so good in this. He's like, I love like, so like obviously Game of Thrones has like the character archetypes and like, oh, this guy's the Littlefinger, this guy's this character, this guy's good, like, but like there's so many like amalgamations in the show, and this, and like I love Otto Hightower so far, and his kids, I think is great. I got a feeling that Daemon's gonna run a sword through him real quick, but
probably
you got to do what you got to do, I guess, Daemon.
He keeps antagonizing him. You know that there's like hardcore, like when he goes to Alicent, because I also love the reveal that Alicent is Otto's daughter. When he goes up to her for the favor during the joust, it's like, oh no, secret. Just here's another wrinkle, or here's another thing of like how messed up this is gonna turn. This could become.
I really like that, as gross as it is, that he tries to send her to lay with the king as like a consolation. That the scene that you get is actually a really tender, her just being like, you know, this is what I wanted when I lost my mom, And I thought that's where we left that moment was really nice, because like that just felt more true to Viserys and everything, and it made the moment stand emotionally in a way where I think if they had zigged into the actual sexual conduct, it would have totally undercut a lot of it.
Absolutely.
If they had done that and the king just turned out to turn into a pervy old man where he's like, hey, I need to feel something, so let me bang this younger girl in front of me.
Right.
But instead, him just sitting there and listening while he's... I also like how he's carving this structure. I don't know what it is exactly. I can't place it.
I think it's King's Landing.
Yeah, I think it might be King's Landing. I just love how
it's not. It's Valyria.
Oh, right. Yeah, Old Valyria.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just carving a thing of the city of Old Valyria, and he's just like, let me do my hobby. I'm really sad right now. And she's like, hey, this is what I wanted. Do you want this? And I was like, this went from creepy to very like kind of wholesome real quick, and I really appreciate that, because also as much as I like Viserion, I'm like kind of or is it Viserion or Viserys? Viserys. Yeah, I called Daemon Viserys earlier.
Listen, they all got mixed matching old names, like it's.
Yeah. And then, of course, looking back at Game of Thrones, it's like you got Viserys, who was Daenerys' brother, and then you got Jon's real name, which was Rhaegar Targaryen, because there's a billion other Rhaegars.
Right, because they take ancestor names and everything, yeah.
It's like, But anyways, going back to the king, it's like, I don't like you for what you did to your wife, but at the same time, I kind of feel for you.
It's the thing that Game of Thrones does so well. It's like really complex characters. Because like he can be both at the same time, a good person, someone who doesn't take advantage of younger women, but also someone who lets his wife die to save his child. He can be both those things.
And end up with nothing.
I've seen a lot of people talking about like Viserys' decision in regards to like the wife and son thing. And people are saying like, I can't believe he chose the newborn over the wife he loved and everything. And I'm like, that's not the choice he was presented. Like in the text of the show, what they say is they're probably going to lose both, but they might be able to save the kid.
Yeah.
But like they're already telling him like she's probably going to die from this. And like presented with those options, I'm like, this makes more sense. This was not him saying like we can save her and kill the child, or we can save the child and kill her.
Yeah.
They said they're probably both gonna go. We don't know for sure, but probably. That's the information he was presented with. And I'm like, I think that's far more not that the correct version of doing that, right, would be to talk with his wife about that decision rather than just force it upon her.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like I don't think he's as monstrously villainous for that decision as a lot of people seem to be taking it, because a lot of people seem to be taking it in the avenue of he chose the son over the wife. And I'm like, he was presented with a choice of neither or one.
He's not Stannis Baratheon sacrificing his child.
Right. Exactly. I did. Some people have been making that comparison. And I'm like, I don't see it that way. That's not the choice he made. I do think it's pretty shitty that he
didn't talk to her about it.
Didn't talk to her at all and just made it happen to her. But they clearly say to him like they're probably both gonna go.
Through the wonders of modern science, a C-section. We can do this now.
That's real.
Just stab her in the belly. Really, man, that was a really emotional scene. Like they shot that scene so well. Like, and the actor playing the wife, like the whole time, it's like, I'm never having a child ever again for you. No siree.
So where I live right now is with my friends who are like a month out from expecting their first child and everything.
Did you watch this with them?
No.
Okay,
and so I watched this and they were talking about like, oh, how like we were excited to watch it. I'm like, do not watch it until after your son is born. Just don't watch it till later.
Yeah. I totally forgot that where you're living, Sparkz. And I was like, yeah, definitely watch this afterwards.
I'm very glad I did not try to watch it with them. Yeah, I think that's a really emotional scene, and especially the cut, like when you have him holding the son and they don't tell you that anything's wrong, and you just cut to the funeral pyre later, and eventually see the small child. And
here's the thing, though, you kind of hear it coming, because when the baby's being held by the maester, he gurgles.
Yeah, there's a bad noise.
There's a noise that's made, and then the maester's face turns from like, yay, baby boy, and heir to the throne, and then it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
And you instantly know something's wrong. And then it cuts like, because I was really hoping that maybe the kid survived. And then I see the wrapped up tiny bundle. I'm like, oh no.
I feel
it's tragic.
Oh no.
I feel bad that like he lost his mom and son, but I'm like, they talk about like all the issues with pregnancy before, like a lot of them, and I'm like, well, it's kind of what happens when you're sleeping with your cousin constantly in a line of families, my friend.
It's true. Real quick, I don't often do this, but I want to do some wig talk. Some real bad wigs in this episode, y'all. Specifically, and I feel bad because like a lot of the Black Targaryens, there's specifically there's like one child who just has a giant like white wig that's like, oh, that looks just awful, and like I could deal with most of the wigs, but some of them are like
I have to be honest with you because like I know you listen to Ringerverse too, so they talk about wigs from all kinds of things all the time. I just tend to just like fuzz that out. Yeah. I'm like, I can't get hung up on it. Like wigs are so constantly not great. In TV shows and films. I mean, like, I just don't think they put in the proper time or budget necessary to get good wigs, because this seems to be a consistent problem over a lot of big properties. Where
it doesn't ruin the show. It's just like, no. I don't often notice it this bad, but there's like a lot of characters in this. I'm like, oh, come on, HBO.
I think like the fact that Smith's looks passable is enough for me to be like,
his is
okay,
fine.
as long as this character who has to be on screen a lot looks passable, then I'm just gonna let the rest just wash over me, and I'm not gonna focus on it too hard. But I know what you're saying. Like, I'm aware it's there, but I'm not focusing on it. It's like spotty CGI where I'm like, I gotta let that go.
Yeah. The wigs, they didn't really bother me all that much. I'm like, I'm just gonna let this roll. I'm just gonna let this ride. I don't care.
Speaking of letting it ride, have we talked about how Damon does some Tony Hawk Pro Skater moves at the tournament?
Oh, he does a board slide grind on his back across the rail.
Let me tell you, it happens like mere moments after like the C-section scene happens. So I go from like almost in tears to laughing my ass off in like literally 10 seconds because it's so fast. And then he's doing a grind 360 no scope, and I'm just like, what the fuck? It was hilarious.
That was fun. That was fun to watch. Actually,
really
the whole jousting scene was fun, to be honest. And also even the sorry, Sparkz, but one of the things I actually liked is how I want to say it was Rhaena and Alicent who are talking about how they're just like, this is, or no, was it the queen that never was? Some Targaryen, someone of the royal family was talking about how jousting is like, it's like how barbaric it is. And then it's just like, yeah, we just watch each other kill each other for sport. And then you see people dying on the jousting ring, and you go cut to a shot of the crowd who are like screaming and cheering. And people are like, oh, they're like horrified, but they can't look away. And you hear someone yell, kill him, kill him.
It was the queen who never was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I really like Daemon's dragon armor that he wears during the joust scenes. I think that's really good.
His helmet.
He looks like the real life version of one of like, God, I don't know where this is coming from in my memory, but like one of the old Lego Knight figures.
Yeah. No, I know exactly.
That has like the black dragon. Like he looks like the real life incarnation of that.
I bought all those sets. Oh yeah.
My only problem with like the violence at the tournament thing, as far as like killing the guy, is that it was not clear why some were allowed to be killed and some weren't. Like where that violence level was coming from. I know it's been talked about. If you haven't listened to the Ringerverse pods yet, Ryan, it was talked about on there that like it seems like if you yield, you don't get killed.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
because that's like the thing between Daemon and the Dornish guy. But there's another one that happens earlier where like the guy's never given a chance to yield, and it's like just weird chaos violence occurs.
It's very loosey goosey.
Yeah, and I that part threw me a little. I'm like, I don't know why this is necessarily happening right now.
I 100%,
especially because it was two characters who like I didn't give a shit about. I think one of them was a Baratheon, but the other one I didn't give a shit about.
No, yeah, you're 100% right. I think, and again, like the speech you're talking about, Ben, is like, these are all men who don't know war, so they come here to fight and shit. So I think it's supposed to be like, this is where they come to fight, and like nobody really stops them because who cares? But like again, like the explanations of the actual rules of the tournament itself weren't established. But so like I see where you're coming from. Because it is kind of just like, if you don't want to die, you don't die, except
Right.
this one time at the beginning. So like,
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like, the rules seem very fishy there. And I think it would have been more pronounced to me if it was like that particular moment had involved characters I was more connected to. It didn't. So
Yes.
I'm like, I guess whatever, but like I also don't understand why it's there, other than like the conversation, which I do think is a good bit of these men don't know war. Which
There
implies
is-
like hunger for it that will come.
Yes.
Foreshadowing.
There is a moment where like a dude gets like an axe to the face, and then his body gets dragged off, and a piece of his face falls off, and I was just like, "Ooh, God, ooh, that was too real."
Yeah, they really went for a lot of violent gore in this first episode.
They wanted you to remember it's rated R. If you
I
didn't forget.
guess so. Like there's the brutal massacring of the townspeople. By the City Watch.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was enough. Like that's like the first like really gory violence in the episode. And for me, I was like, cool, got it. And then we get the jousting, and we get the C-section, and I'm like, this is
At first,
a lot.
yeah, and at first Damon becomes like leader of the cops. He becomes basically the cop commander.
Yeah.
And he just goes on a raid. Like, hey, anyone who's done anything wrong, we're gonna get them.
Yeah.
So he just captures like potentially hundreds of people, and he chops off hands, and he murders, and he cuts off dicks. And I'm just like, is this what you wanted, Viserys? Oh my God, it's crazy. You go from 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah. They have like, what is the one person in the council is gosh, I love him. I'm really happy he's here. Corlys Valerian.
Yeah,
who agrees with Damon's method, says that the City Watch should be feared.
His name is Valerion, which is like, he's like a cousin to the Targaryens, like Valerian steel. Like, that's cool. I'm into that. Yeah.
It's like a huge deal that they're here because they have like the full control of the seas at this point. Like the way that Targaryens control the sky is the way that Valerians control the entire like ocean area for market.
That's awesome.
They have the largest island in Blackwater Bay. I'm looking this up now.
Blackwater Bay.
So it's like a huge deal that he's paired with Rhaenys.
Cool.
I'm super excited, and I'm really fascinated by the fact that like they haven't talked a lot about it, but like the fact that like these characters were not traditionally like labeled to be played by Black people, but they are here because they want this sense of you're different from us even though you're here.
Yeah.
And
we're all family.
Very much there. Yeah. But I really like him. I really like his involvement in the council. I think it's really, he already comes across as someone who's thinking about like truly the best for the kingdom, because he is campaigning for Rhaenys if that's on the table, but he's also campaigning for Daemon. He's like, either one of them is a better ruler than what you're talking about right now.
Because you suck.
Right, because he doesn't seem to like Otto Hightower or anyone else on the council. He only seems to like Viserys, and even then, he seems to be aware that Viserys is weak.
And that's what that's like, again, being this pilot episode, establishing like who's maybe going to be on each side for this civil war. Like, I'm so excited to see the council turn and like friends become enemies, become friends, all that stuff. And like, I'm so stoked for it.
People have highlighted, it's a really nice subtle nod. A lot of Black people on Twitter have highlighted that they love that Corlys covers his drink so it can't be poured into when he's at the small council table, because he does not trust drinking with these people.
Smart.
You should, not even a little. Right, exactly. And I think that's just a great touch, that the implication is like he does not drink with these folks. He does not trust them.
He's been through it. He knows.
Yeah.
I wish I remembered a specific moment, but I remember laughing several times to this episode. I found it to be funnier than I expected to. I wish I remembered specifically. I think there's a couple times during the tournament that I guffawed a little bit. God, I wish I remembered. That's can't think of anything. That's a shame. That's okay.
I definitely laughed when that one night asked for the favor and then he just got his ass kicked.
Yeah. Maybe that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I want the favor of the queen that never was. Yay, I got the favor. And then it's just like got lays out in one shot.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the funeral scene at the end with Damon talking to Rhaenyra,
Rhaenyra.
and it's like the first time he's really been like real, like in like real with her, and like your father needs you, and he's like, yeah, well, he also needs a son, which I'm not. And I'm like, that's so rough, like to be in the position she's in, the position he's in, and then they reconciliate at the end. Like that's good.
That's the thing I really like about him is I think he is real with family all the time, because like when he has the earlier scene with Rhaenyra, he's very blunt with her. He's very straightforward with her. And he's very honest with Viserys when Viserys calls him back in.
Yeah.
You know, I think like I agree with what Viserys says, which is that like Daemon should have been either by his side or by Rhaenyra's side that night. Because I was thinking it when Alicent goes to Viserys. I was like, it'd be really cool if Daemon really wants to be the successor. He should be there with Viserys right now, and supporting his brother, but he's not. So I think that Viserys has a good point there. But what I really like is Daemon's totally right, saying that like you're weak, and I'm the one who wants to protect you because the rest of them know you're weak and they're trying to pick you apart. And you can see it. You can see it in all the council meetings in that episode. So Daemon plays it completely true and sincere. And the one thing that like didn't work for me about the episode is I feel like we go from Viserys. I know that what he's told is that Daemon said something like, you know, heir for a day, and that feels very insulting and painful to him in that moment. But he goes from defending Daemon in the council meeting to casting him out a little too quickly for me, even with that being the inciting incident.
Do you think because he just lost his wife and child that he might just be under emotional stress at the moment?
I can factor in that pain and that reality, but the thing is like it felt like, I guess the way that it plays out feels like it's about more than just that in the way that he decides to turn him away. And like he's actually been like hiding a lot of.
Well, they do have that. They do kind of have that spout because Daemon's. It's like, oh, you've always pushed me away, so it starts to dive into their entire life. So,
right. It does, but it just felt strange for how much he defended Daemon in the council, especially Daemon knowing it. I think is also a factor because we know Daemon was listening.
It's true.
And I'm like, if he's listening, it all the more enforces. I mean, it's fine. Like, this is the story we need to tell. We need to tell this breaking apart for them because he has to pick Rhaenyra. I understand that's the story we're doing. I just think that the execution maybe could have been a little better. I maybe wouldn't have shown Daemon listening to him defend him. So that Daemon didn't know. Or something like that, because Daemon knows he has at least two friends inside that council. It's Viserys and Corlys are both like standing by him.
It's true. Yeah, even Viserys is like, hey, maybe a tight night's watch, a hard night's watch is what we need for the city. Yeah, because like since my grandmother died, like the city's kind of been shit. I'm not the best king. Sorry, y'all. Do you think? Real quick question. Do you think Daemon? Because you are right, he is always real with his family. Do you think he is actually truly sad about what happened to the kid and the wife? Because he's out celebrating at a whorehouse, right? So like, does he actually feel lament for what happened? Because like he is going to be the king because of this. You know what I mean?
I think he absolutely wanted to be king, but I don't think he wanted it at the cost of his brother having his wife.
Yes.
I don't think he wanted his brother to lose his wife because of it. And I do think he genuinely feels his upset over that. I think it's very important that when we see the flashback of him doing the speech in the whorehouse, we don't see him say heir for a day, nor does he admit that he ever said it. He does say that we mourn in our own way.
That's true. We don't see him say it.
Which I think implies that someone else said it there and he didn't like tamp it down, but I don't think Daemon necessarily said it. He doesn't admit to it, and we don't see it.
And also the second that Otto starts talking.
And Otto's a piece of shit.
Yeah. Because at first I'm like, okay, it's weird because a lot of the characters you definitely feel like, oh, like especially going from the trailers, you think, oh, Daemon's gonna be the villain. I wanna see this guy fall. And then the more I watch the show, it's like, I mean, Otto, I understand, but then when he sends his daughter to go possibly bone the king after the king lost his wife and son, I'm like, that's a creepy move. And then the second he starts talking and essentially just rats out Daemon about the incident at the brothel, And you're right, we never see him yell the heir for a day.
You know what? I have not
And
considered.
I'm like, what's really going?
I have not considered Otto is actually. Otto might be kind of bad.
Well, here's the thing,
because I haven't considered that.
Here's the thing I know about the text that this is based on. Is it's full of accounts and unreliable narrator accounts at that. So it's multiple accounts of things. So we know Viserys will eventually be killed.
Yep.
But even in the text, it is not clear who or how necessarily. And if I were to guess right now, people are going to make it look like Daemon did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% don't think Daemon would kill his brother. But they're going to make it look that
he's going to get framed, and this is how the Civil War. Ooh, it's spicy.
I think it's probably going to be someone like Otto or other members on the council who already seem to, as Daemon said, be playing at the weakness of Viserys. But they're going to make it look like Daemon did it, and I 100% think that this episode is establishing Daemon would never.
And it's going to be Rhaena who doesn't believe that Daemon didn't do it.
Right.
And Daemon has to clear his name while also like fighting for his life to not be murdered.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
We're getting into some good like Littlefinger scheming, like people, like so many different players scheming and plotting at the same time.
Look at my little fingers.
Well, because because the prompt at the beginning of the episode when we're seeing Jaehaerys and everything is Jaehaerys knowing the only thing that could tear down the Targaryens was Targaryens themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I think that's the whole point, is like the people around the Targaryens knowing that's true and having to set them against each other when they didn't actually start anything between each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they're priming Daemon to look like the bad guy and the piece of shit who would do this to his brother, who would do this Shakespearean tragedy. But Daemon, it's very obvious, would not kill his brother.
This is so much better than I thought, because like again, like without watching this first episode, you just assume, oh, Matt Smith looks like the bad guy, he's the bad guy. But like you can be kind of an asshole and not be the bad guy, right? You're just kind of an asshole. Right. So like making Daemon like, oh, he like through unfortunate circumstances, like he becomes the villain, but he's not actually like the bad guy. That's awesome. That's so much better than what I could have asked for.
He's not a Joffrey Baratheon right out of the gate.
No.
Like the second we meet Joffrey, we know, oh, this kid is a little shit.
Or he's not Daenerys quite yet.
Yeah, he's definitely not Daenerys Targaryen quite yet either. But unlike Joffrey, who you knew was a bad apple from the very get-go, it's like, I'm kind of, man, this is the kind of shit that that I miss from Game of Thrones. It's like the characters who you understand and you kind of feel for, even though no one is completely clean in this incident. I think the only person who is 100% clean of anything or two people is Rhaena and Alicent. That's it.
The two youngsters. Yeah.
And everyone else is like, oh, they got their hands in some pasta they shouldn't be sticking in.
We keep saying Rhaena. It's Rhaenyra.
That's what's fun. That's what's always fun about Game of Thrones is like, despite having clear heroes and clear villains, like everyone's on the grayscale. Like living in like medieval fantasy world like is really shitty, and you got to do what you got to do to survive, whether you're good or bad. That's what when Game of Thrones is at its peak. It's like good people doing bad things and bad people doing good things.
Well, Ryan, let's just hope that no one gets the grayscale.
We're seeing it already.
Is that grayscale though? Is that grayscale just infective cuts from the throne?
No, bro. I'm 99% sure this is how the grayscale thing starts, is with him.
Really?
100%.
All right.
Like him being real quick, like him being close to all the dragon shit, and then him getting scars, like basically like tetanus from the metal throne. Like I think that's how grayscale starts.
You know what, Fanny? I was thinking about that too, and I could not remember if that was how grayscale happened, because they never.
And I'm not gonna look it up.
Yeah, neither am I. I'm not gonna open the wiki. But that's okay. It probably is grayscale.
I really like the new throne. We touched on the throne.
Yes. Looks
the many more swords finally layout of it. I think that looks pretty good.
Fire chandeliers, awesome.
Looks really great.
I love fire chandeliers.
The pit that is more of a ruin when we see it in Game of Thrones now is like more of an altar where he talks to Rhaenyra and has his dragon head because he doesn't ride his dragon ever since he never took another dragon after his dragon died. I really like that.
He named his son Balon after Balerion, the biggest dragon.
Yeah.
The last dragon to see the Valyria before the Doom.
The Doom.
I think Viserys is far more like what we were saying earlier. I think he's far more in like the Jaime Lannister category, where like he does have, I think, a good heart. Like there's I think he truly loves his brother, but even beyond that, I don't think he would ever hurt his brother because he loves his niece for sure. Like I think both of those things are true. So I think like Ben said, I think it's very telling that Daemon in his speech to Viserys says, "You pushed me away. I would have been here right by your side at all times, but you didn't want to put me in that position." And it's shitty because like Otto Hightower was already hand of the king before Viserys to Jaehaerys, and maybe that should have changed hands. Maybe it should have been Daemon.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to pick your hand. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. What? Oh, there's something else. Speaking of the Iron Throne, I really love how we constantly see the king getting cut.
Yeah.
On the throne. And how, because there's a line that the most dangerous seat in the world is the Iron Throne, both metaphorically and literally.
Right, because this is something like later, the reason it's not as insane with the swords is because they smoothed it out.
It's like, I mean, it is cool to have a throne made out of the swords of your conquered foes, but at the same time, it's like maybe dull the blades before you make a seat out of it.
Yeah.
I hear Cult of the Lamb in the background. That's a very good game. No, it's just I love the noise. Real quick, we talked about it earlier, but Daemon's drip in this entire episode, whether he's in a tournament or he's like on a horse, beating up civilians in the city, looks cool. Dragon armor has never looked better. I love the dragon helmets. Looking cool, bad boy.
I do think it's also worth noting that like it seems that part of what was forced upon Daemon to keep him away was his marriage.
Yes,
which
to
he
a woman
zero interest in.
He does not like.
Right, and that's like part of the thing that's pushed him away from being with his brother, and he hates it. I think that's all very valid. It's funny because like, not that Viserys is a bad guy, but I do think Daemon comes out as like, whether or not I agree with his methods about the City Watch, he comes out as the person who cares more for his family than it seems that even Viserys does, because Viserys is also like so focused on an heir, he doesn't really give a shit about his daughter. Yeah, as she points out when they're at the funeral pyre, which I think is such a scathing line when she's talking to Daemon, and she says, I wonder if my father truly experienced happiness for the few hours he had a son.
That's so sad. That is such a sad moment. He's basically at this point, like, I think I'm not great with like terms, but I think the terms like lame duck president, where like you're kind of just a president and you don't really do anything until the next person comes in. Like that feels like what Viserys is right now. He's just kind of chilling there, not doing much.
Yeah. He's not a bad ruler necessarily, but he is one who has entirely grown up in peace.
Yeah,
and he doesn't really know how to deal with anything outside of that.
Lord of the Rings,
which is all the more why there's an argument of like, Jaehaerys picking Viserys over Rhaenys is like Rhaenys implied would have been a better ruler. Corlys says the same when they're sitting in the council. A little bit more of the book lore is that Jaehaerys's wife, she, when he picks Viserys over Rhaenys, she just like leaves for 3 years or so because she's so upset with him, because like I guess they ruled as mutuals. And like she was a great queen, but this is all like lore stuff I've learned this week. But because of his decision to say like a ruler can't be a woman because Rhaenys should have been the clear ruler, she decides, okay, I guess I'm just gonna piss off for a while, since you clearly don't need me. And then she did eventually come back, but like their relationship was never salvaged.
I do like. Kingdoms are often patriarchal and stuff. So like, I like that the rules are like, well, there's no rule against having a queen. Right. We just haven't done it before.
Right.
So
she's never been in the A spot.
Yeah. So it is kind of cool. Like we don't have to have a whole season of like, we got to change the rules. And it's just like, no, we were just so male dominated. Like we just never thought about it really. So like, I like that we could just like do it and then deal with the ramifications instead of having a season of like, let's get all the shit done to make it happen. It's just like, nah, we can just make it happen. Like that's right.
And even it kind of still makes me a little bit mad that Cersei was the first one, because there's that one episode in like maybe season 5 where she's talking with someone from the Iron Bank. It's like, there was never a ruling queen on the Iron Throne before. Congratulations on being the first. It's like, that's right. Cersei was the first one. God damn it.
And again, that's what's so fun of like whether you know like everything about House of the Dragon or you know nothing about it and just know Game of Thrones. Like I still think, despite knowing knowledge, like that's what's so fun about like a good prequel is like you have the end goal, but there's so much to weave and dip and dodge in between, especially with like a lot of characters that I don't know anything about. And like the Starks, we can get away from the Starks for a bit, the Baratheons, all them. Like it is cool to be like, yo, Hightowers, what's up, Hightowers? What's up, Otto?
Yeah, definitely. I'm more inclined to watch. I mean, I was definitely inclined to watch the show because the second they said, hey, we're going about the Targaryens, and I love the Targaryens. I mean, I love dragons, so anyone that has to have anything to do with dragons remotely, I'm all for.
They're the most interesting house for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like, hey, they got freaking dragons. It's like, I love dragons. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like the Starks are only interesting during Game of Thrones.
They're
really
interesting
outside of it.
200 years from now.
Yeah, it's like, so what's the deal with the Starks? How they just chill up in Winterfell? They help with the wall every once in a while.
They said Nymeria. Nymeria is the name of Arya's wolf. I'm like, hey, it's all connected, baby.
Nymeria is like they're like one of the most important one of their most important like mythological figures as far as a woman. Yeah, it is cool. It is cool that they bring that up.
I just unlocked Nymeria's icon in multiverses, so I can have a beautiful wolf.
That's
awesome. My profile thing. Thank you, Game of Thrones.
I do want to shout out Graham McTavish, who plays Sir Harold, who is essentially the new Jorah Mormont for Rhaenyra, and I think he's awesome.
That dude's so cool.
That's the dude with the beard, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're watching this. So we're watching this, and fans like, I know that guy. I'm like, from where? He's from Outlander.
He was one of the dwarves in The Hobbit. He's also been in like other fantasy stuff. This is like
he's an awesome performer, and this is an awesome role for him. I'm super.
He's also
happy.
like I think like a voice actor.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, that guy's cool.
Yeah, I think he's really great.
Yeah, I love this cast. Like I think the first episode, it really made me excited because like I'll be honest, if the first episode was just like fine, I probably wait until like it ends to catch up with it. But like I really liked the first episode enough, and like specifically like I know there's going to be like time jump stuff happening. I'm really excited to see like the progression of this Civil War. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
He's just because I wanted to check real quick. He is in Aquaman because I thought so, and he's also in he's a voice actor in Castlevania.
That's where I know him from, Castlevania. That's for sure. Yeah.
What do you voice in Castlevania?
I'll pull it up for you. Hold on. Go ahead and talk about something else. I'll find it.
I'm not going to say Dracula, but I might say Dracula.
I might say Dracula too.
But I don't know. But I definitely recognize his voice. Yeah, I'm
Dracula.
I know.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, he's great. I'm really glad to be back. It definitely, it partially felt like we are making this for, a casual audience who never watched Game of Thrones, but also there's enough Game of Thrones love in there where like, if you know the stuff, it is going to help make sense of a little more stuff. I definitely, again, going from the beginning of the episode, like the journey to get to here, now that we're finally here, it's nice to be back in Westeros. I am glad that I really, really liked this first episode. And I can't wait to watch next one.
It definitely got some of the bad taste out of my mouth from the finale, from the final season. I mean, there's still
I wish I could say the same, because honestly what happened is like they do the Song of Ice and Fire moment, and it's like a terrible winter will come, and I'm like, I know how that winter goes.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
No, okay. outside
the final battle of that winter is okay.
Man, there's still 6 seasons of a show that's really good, y'all.
That's true. But outside of that moment, because once again, Sparkz, I was kind of eye rolling. It's like, really? But beside that being beside the point, that being the only negative of a I would say a pretty darn good episode, I will also say I am happy to be back in Westeros. Ooh. I am glad to be back home. Not back home, but I missed it. I truly did. Game of Thrones, when it ended, we all dropped off of it so hard.
It was
would-
notably it was the first Fake Nerds Watch show, and what a bummer it turned out to be.
Mhm. We were so hyped.
We're full circle. Full circle.
I mean, I still remember the memes when Jamie Lannister goes in, he sees Brandon, and you hear the cut from "Oh shit, oh shit."
Listen, sometimes Danny, she just forgot about the Iron Fleet. Okay, like
There are realistically 2 cameos from Game of Thrones on the table for this show. And I just want to know if either of you are interested in them. One is Bran, and the other is Melisandre.
So I could care 2 shits about Bran.
Yeah.
I would love to see Melisandre, that old witch. Give me
I-
that. I love her.
I agree with you. I'm like, if I'm gonna see any cameo, the only one I would want to see is Melisandre. I don't want to see anybody else.
Because Melisandre is also, and you can tell it's revealed that she's an old hag in Game of Thrones. It's like that woman is ancient. She got some magic in her. I would love to see her pop up and maybe join the or start the Lord of Light, or maybe start doing that whole thing. Go start drinking that Kool-Aid.
Start our religion.
Yeah. Start a cult. I don't know.
Cult of the Lamb.
Cult of the Lord of Light.
There was lots of names. One of my favorite Game of Thrones characters is Beric Dondarrion. He's got the flaming sword. There's a mention of a Dondarrion in here, and I'm like, oh, everyone showed up today. Everyone's lineage is here.
I was surprised that there wasn't a Lannister.
Oh yeah.
I was surprised, not upset, just surprised.
Yeah. Now, I could be making this up out of my asshole, but aren't the Lannisters like a newer family that they're trying to?
I mean,
they've been the Lords of Casterly Rock for years. They've been a thing for a long time.
Maybe they're later.
Newer in the long term of history, still currently exist at this.
Yeah. Okay, then maybe it's a later on thing. Who knows?
Oh like I think they can take their time to like. I'd like to have kind of a temperature check on a loose level of like where what is everybody's like land like right now.
The other blonde assholes.
Yeah.
The other blonde ass.
Well,
I think the most excited I've been about this show is doing this right now, talking about it. Like I've definitely not been as. It's really hard when Lord of the Rings is right there, and I'm getting pumped. And I'm like, okay, I guess also this.
That's like next week, man. That's like
a
week.
I know. I don't know what I don't know what I'm gonna do about that.
I'm not gonna say it because I watched the trailer for The Rings of Power yesterday, and after I saw that trailer, I was like, holy shit, it looks so good. And then my mind started thinking, it's like, man, we got so much great fantasy stuff this year.
We're blessed.
House of the Dragon is looking really good. Elden Ring's been killing it ever since it came out. It's man, fantasy's back, baby.
Hell yeah, baby.
Also, real quick, just because I was looking at the cast list for the show, I found out that I don't think I knew this, that Maggie Q is going to be in the show, and I'm really excited.
She shows up later, right? She hasn't showed up yet.
She hasn't shown up yet.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No. One more thing. This is a random thing. This is gonna sound like an ad. I apologize. It's not. But if anyone listening or watching to this happens to be in the Los Angeles area, the Natural History Museum in downtown LA has an exhibit going on for House of the Dragon.
Oh.
And you can sit on the new Iron Throne.
How long is it in town for? Will I be in Southern California?
It leaves September 7th.
Okay,
and we're recording this August 25th. And the only reason why I know about it is because I got a letter in the mail to join the society and be a donor to the museums. And I saw this ad. I'm like, what? It's like they have props, they have costumes. It's like a thing. It's like, hey, here's all this cool stuff from the show. But also the big draw is like, I can sit on the new the new Iron Throne.
Yeah, get grayscale.
I want to sit on that throne, baby.
Get grayscale.
I don't think we're gonna be back much for House of the Dragon this year.
No,
there's just too many shows. I will say, like, I'm open to. We'll see what our schedules are like because there's a lot going on, a lot of balls in the air especially for Ryan and I, but in general. I'm not against a mid-season check-in and then a season finale check-in.
Do we know? Is it 10 episodes? Do we know?
I believe so, but let me double check right now.
Because the plan was, when I initially talked to the homeboys here, listeners, watchers at home, it would be episode 1 and then a season finale talk, simply because there are so many. You got Marvel shows, Star Wars shows, you got Lord of the Rings, we have our own lives, we're moving soon. So like a lot of shit happening.
You got a lot of stuff going. I'm totally fine with doing like a mid-season check-in to see how we feel.
Well, let's see. If how many episodes? Maybe if we can fit
pulling
it in.
up right now.
Yeah. Because like we're gonna do She-Hulk soon. We haven't even talked about Lord of the Rings, but I know we probably want to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Definitely.
We just touched on it. That like I definitely want to do that.
We were like, yeah, fantasy's back, and it's like, oh.
Listen,
Have you guys heard the like early
buzz?
review buzz?
Yes, I have.
It's
I
super
have
good.
not. I have not.
It's
Okay,
good, Ben.
so
It's
there's 10 episodes
Okay.
in this season.
Okay.
So the midway point would be September 18th.
Okay.
And it ends at the end of October 23rd.
I'll tell you what. September 18th, I will have probably be moved into Southern California at that point.
Yes,
So I will not have a job. So I will probably be good for that week if we wanted to. If not, we'll do a season finale.
I think bare minimum, at least the two of you can do it, even if I can't make it.
Yeah,
we'll figure.
We'll see
the good news is we have time, and then we could also stew on it because I mean I don't want to say it so to jinx it, but in case the show were to take a wrong turn somewhere and we're not super hot on it anymore.
Oh, if it gets bad, then this is the last episode.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want that to happen because I want Game of Thrones content. I want to go into a store and see Game of Thrones stuff, or just like talk to other people about Game of Thrones and be like, man, I miss talking about Game of Thrones.
Ben,
I love talking about Game of Thrones back in the day. Now with this show and the show or this first episode is a good start. It's a good stepping stone. And I'm hoping it continues to improve more and more down the line. So far, I'm having a great time being back in Westeros, 172 years before Daenerys F shit up. And I'm just happy to be back. I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to look up in the sky and see dragons fly around. That just makes my nerd heart happy.
Truly, if I wasn't so damn hyped for Andor, and that wasn't happening at this time period, I would say, I'd be happy to do House of the Dragon weekly and do Lord of the Rings weekly and like do that fantasy shit dedicated. But I'm like, that Andor show's gonna cripple us. I know it.
And we got She-Hulk. Yeah.
She-Hulk. Yes, it's there. We already know we're doing that bi-weekly. I'm not too concerned about She-Hulk. But yeah, Andor,
it's just one of those things where on this show we're like, if a show's really, really good, we want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it ends up we talking about shows that aren't as good. Yeah. And it's like I want to make sure that the spoilage is rich for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think that'll do it then.
I think that will do it. Yeah. So
love it.
How does Brandon do this, man?
Hey, let me call him real quick. Hey, Brandon.
Anyways, like this video, subscribe to the channel. So this is Fake Nerds Watch. This is a spin-off show of the Fake Nerd Podcast. Fake Nerd Podcast gets together every Sunday around sometime during the day. Just keep an eye on our Twitter on Fake Nerd Guys.
Unless it's Saturday.
Unless it's Saturday, because sometimes we do stuff on Saturday. So yeah, to keep an eye on our Twitter, keep an eye on just keep an eye on the channel. Subscribe to this channel, ring the little bell, so every time we do go live, you get notifications like, oh sweet, they're live right now. And of course, watching us back to the replay, totally awesome. FakeNerdPodcast.com. That's our essential. Think of the Fake Nerd Podcast family of shows as Disneyland, where the website is the hub where you can go everywhere. You got, of course, Animation Station. You have my shows, Basement Arcade Posman. You also have Basement Arcade, where we play video games, and also links to our Patreon are there. Links to our TeePublic are there. So if you want to support us, go ahead, click those links.
Also, Fake Nerds Watch will have a new She-Hulk coming up soon.
Exactly. That's what
She-Hulk, Sandman, Lord of the Rings, Andor. It's all in the her
You know what? Yeah. I totally forgot about Sandman. Fanny's been watching Sandman. One of her best friends.
So did I.
So not only that, her best friend came over to spend the night the other day, and she asked me if I was watching Sandman, and I said not yet. And her first things out of her mouth was, "Oh my God, Sandman's so good! You need to watch it." And then she asked me if it's based on a comic book. I said yes. She's like, "Oh, have you read it?" I also said no, and she's like, "You probably should then."
I'm gonna try and get Brandon to watch this and see if maybe Brandon will come join us for House of the Dragon next time.
Ooh, hot D? You think he's ready for hot D?
Well, I'd kind of love it if he does enjoy it, if he could come in and give his non-Game of Thrones knowledge perspective.
That's a good point.
Ryan, when you were saying that thing, I was like, wait, what are we talking about right now?
He does like watching Bridgerton and Downton Abbey. So imagine that boring shit, but with dragons.
He likes Matt Smith, so
he likes Matt Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying Matt Smith. I'm not gonna lie, he's definitely one of my favorites of the show. Yes, I already said, like this channel, subscribe, And also, Fake Nerd Podcast at on socials, Instagram, Twitter, Gmail. If you want to get in touch with the show, is FakeNerdGuys@gmail.com. If you want to get in touch with us personally, I'm Ben Magnet27 on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and also on a side note, I do a bunch of video game stuff for Old School Gamer Magazine, Fusion Gaming Magazine, and GoNintendo.com. Sparkz.
You can find me just hoping that in the end, Daemon is vindicated. At SparksWitty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZWitty.
Ryan.
You could find me hoping that Daemon digivolves into Mental Daemon at DJ Tony Snark 616 everywhere, all the time, all at once.
I like that a lot. That was a good one.
Thank you.
Anyways, until next time, guys. Hopefully there will fire and blood, and hopefully it continues to.
Oh, wait, we didn't talk about real quick the Game of Thrones remix music. Like,
sure.
The Game of Thrones like theme was like I didn't think they would use it, but then it's like remixed, and I'm like, oh, it's spicy. I like it.
It is very, very spicy. So, anyways, until next time, gentlemen, stay fake nerds.
Hot.